Welcome to another episode of Heated Conversations. I'm so excited for our episode that we have. We have the head coach of the University of Nebraska, Heather Brink. She comes with lots of experience. Super excited for her to be with us and for her to talk about the Cornhusker gymnastics team and what they have going on this upcoming season. Very excited for you guys to get to learn more about their program, where they're located, some of her values, and things that they have coming up this season. So thank you again for tuning in. Hi, Heather. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to, participate in this and obviously help get our name out there and just reach as many people as we possibly can and what Nebraska stands for. So yeah, thanks again for your time and invitation.
Yeah, absolutely. The big thing with these heated conversations, really, it's the acronym for helping equip athletes to transform. And that's what we get to be, especially as being coaches, right? In the roles that we're in, we get to be able to help, give tools to our athletes to be able to help them become better, females, especially since we're in a female sport. And to be able to help them make better life decisions for life besides gymnastics or after gymnastics or even life during gymnastics. And so I'm super excited to have this conversation. And like you said, to get Nebraska's name out there and get the information out and hopefully help parents and coaches and recruits and even fan base to be able to know more about college gymnastics, know about these programs, the individuals who are behind the programs, and so that they have a more of an understanding so they can have a greater love for the sport.
Yeah, I think coaching gives us a great opportunity to really make a powerful impact on young women. I've kind of run the gamut as far as coaching experience from the club to the young age to the recreational classes through college. So it's been a pretty positive experience. For me, I think it's probably one of my favorite pieces that's driven me to that. So yeah, I mean, I think Nebraska sometimes is overshadowed. So I'm anxious to kind of get the information out there as well.
Love it. So let's kind of work backwards to kind of talk about you and your story to where you are now being the head coach of the University of Nebraska. So how long have you currently been the head coach? How long have you been at Nebraska and what roles were you in? And then we'll kind of go back from there. Were you at other universities? Were you at club? You mentioned rec gymnastics. Were you a gymnast? Kind of talk about all those things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've been at the University of Nebraska since 2011, was when I was hired. I've been the head coach since 2019 season. So I just finished my 5th season as head coach. I'm originally from here in Lincoln, so born and raised. I lived here. I'm probably going to date myself at this point, but started gymnastics as a young child here. Went through back then it wasn't levels. We had classes. um so did all of the compulsories and everything through that piece at 12. So when I was 12 years old, the way the elite section of our sport worked at that point, there was kind of like satellite training spaces. Not all gyms did elite gymnastics. So I chose to move away from home and move to Oklahoma. I did elite gymnastics. I lived there from 8th grade until I graduated high school, ultimately deciding to come back to the University of Nebraska and compete through college in that sense. When I graduated college, I had a business degree. I decided that I was going to go the route of taking a business job. So moved to Arizona. I did a business job there through retirement planning for, I would say I was there about a little less than a year before I started really missing the gym. And I was like, I'm just going to pick up some extra classes, go teach at a local gym, just stay involved in the sport. And so I did. I went to a small gym there in Scottsdale, Arizona, and started coaching classes. Classes turned into compulsories turned into helping with the optionals. And then ultimately a full-time position opened at another gym in Arizona. And I moved over there as a full-time coach. I coached there about 3 years, I believe. 3 or 4 years. I can't remember the exact timeline, but ultimately, when my husband and I decided to start a family, I wanted to be closer to my family, which was still here in Nebraska. So I moved back. When I moved back, the coaching staff at Nebraska was already kind of established and going. And so I went back into my business job, and I stayed there I was 2006 till 2011, so about 5 years. I would help out there's also a local club that works out in our facility in the evenings. And at the time, the two coaches that, well, I guess one of the coaches, assistant coaches for Nebraska, also ran the club program. And when he would travel with the college program, he would ask if I could come in and help out. So I would come in and maybe help out with their compulsories. I started helping out with the meets, the college meets, like being, the floor manager. And eventually those assistant coaches moved on and took other head coaching positions, and opened up some assistant positions here at Nebraska. So when those opened up, I applied and started as an assistant coach, and loved my experience in that sense. I think for me, our previous head coach, Dan Kendig, was a huge mentor for me. Really allowed me an opportunity in the collegiate setting, because he was also my head coach as an athlete, to fall back in love with the sport in a whole nother level that I didn't really anticipate. And then ultimately becoming an assistant coach really kind of showed me the ropes in and out of what it's like to be a coach, what's important, ultimately mentoring these young women. And Dan and I had a pretty good trust level, so we could, I could ask him questions. He would kind of guide me in, how to go about doing things, as far as how do you structure a workout for college versus club? What are all the ins and outs? How you become a different role model for your student athletes in college than you are in a club setting. So ultimately that is how I got into the collegiate setting. And then when Dan retired in 2018, I was named interim for that 2019 season, and then ultimately became head coach at the end of, I think it's maybe February or March timeframe of that season. So there's many times that I'm just like, I look out over my life and I'm like, how did I get here? How did a little girl who was born in Lincoln, Nebraska, end up in this current role? I believe that I'm extremely passionate about Nebraska. Like I said, I feel like I've grown up in this setting, all around our Nebraska athletics, from football to volleyball to women's gymnastics, men's gymnastics, and just really understanding kind of our culture and dynamic. So it's been a great joy. I don't know if I could have scripted that part of my life any better or differently. I believe we go through different aspects of our career to kind of teach us different things. I think the business setting taught me a lot about the business side of collegiate athletics. Coaching and club taught me a lot about the the technique and everything within coaching gymnastics. So when my worlds collided like that, it really kind of helped me be prepared. In some sense, I think we're always learning. Doesn't mean that I've been perfect through all of it, but it allowed me an opportunity to kind of have some different points of view or different perspective on certain things. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of been a whirlwind, to be quite frank. We were talking about kids and how you look back and you go, it goes by fast. In some senses, I feel like my life has been that way as well.
Yeah, no, that sounds really good, because it makes you pretty experienced, right? To be able to relate to your athletes in ways where, one, you can relate to how they feel being at Nebraska, where you were at Nebraska, right? You understand living in that town and living, what the environment is kind of like, just because that was home for you and you went to school there, and then you left and you came back. So you've had different times of your lives, and again, in different times of where the world could be, or even where that town could be, right? Or where the university could have been, and being able to experience all those things. Because I think those things are crucial, especially when you're talking to athletes and recruitable prospect athletes. to be able to talk about, hey, this is why Nebraska is a special place, because I know this, and this from when I was a young girl all the way till now. I've seen the development of Lincoln. I've seen the development of the program, the university, and to be able to give a lot of insight, which I think is super important. And I think it's super crucial for athletes to really understand and to know. And talking about that, what are some things, for you, being an athlete there, that you can kind of talk about, your experiences that really helped you to kind of mold you into who you become as a coach, but also your experience as a college athlete? Because I also want to be able to talk to either current athletes or former athletes and talk about their experience, because I think the stories that they tell also helps those parents and those club coaches, and also those prospect athletes who are recruitable age, to be able to make the right decisions for them. Because if they can relate to someone who's going to be around their same age and say, hey, this is what my experience was like at this university, I think it gives a more parallel correlation to what they may experience. So can you talk about your experience being an athlete at Nebraska?
Yeah. I mean, I had just come from being, away from home. So I had obviously an experience as a young child growing up around Nebraska athletics. So when I came back as a student athlete here, I knew what I was getting as far as our community support, and our fan base here within our state. And ultimately, I feel that that's kind of what drove me to this decision of really coming back home. This truly was a home feeling to me. I knew that our community and our university really supported our athletes, not just one or two sports, but all of our sports. And really, I mean, I grew up in the time when our arenas would sell out for men's gymnastics. Our, football program was winning national titles. So I feel like I've really been able to experience that. And I don't think a lot of people from the outside always know that about Nebraska, right? So when I came here, I already knew how widely and what kind of platform I would have as a student athlete within our program. We have no professional sports. So when you talk about athletics here in the state of Nebraska, the only thing that really exists are colleges. And ultimately, our university kind of gives a face to that state, or to our state. So that's been really special for me in that experience. I would kind of say, like, when I came into college, I was in a different space, both within my relationship of gymnastics and a maturity level. So for me, my experience kind of through that space really allowed me an opportunity to kind of figure out who I was as a person, as opposed to just who I was as a gymnast. I feel very blessed to feel like I had some great teammates who understood that about me, and obviously our coaching staff to be able to give that to me. But ultimately, I believe our community here within our state not only supports, but I mean, we're known as Nebraska nice. Like, I'll never forget when I moved out of college to Arizona, and I was like, shocked, people wouldn't hold the door for you, or people don't stop and say, like, how are you doing? Or, there's no eye contact with people. It just was a different environment for me culturally to experience. So for me, I knew I was going to kind of have that support and that backing. Obviously, the times were different, meaning, like, we were in a different training facility at the time. So I can relate to, we weren't sponsored by Adidas like we are currently. Yet, if I remember correctly, I think we got like one or two t-shirts that said metrics on them, which was like a nutritional supplement at the time. So, I think that those pieces, we've really evolved in that. But one thing that's really remained constant in my experience here at Nebraska are the resources that we provide our student athletes, the community, the support of our community, both from a financial standpoint, but also how our athletic department kind of provides for all of our student athletes and supports them in those senses. And then ultimately just the platform that our student athletes have across our state to be able to, the notoriety of, oh, are you part of the Nebraska gymnastics team? Or, people stop me and they'll say like, oh, I was at your meet. And, they're not afraid to come up and have those conversations with us. So those have been predominantly probably the biggest keys and kind of forming me of who I am as a person. But ultimately now sitting in a head coaching role, knowing kind of those resources that we had then and how that's kind of continued to grow and provide for our student athletes now. I will say that without my experience within the NCAA side of things, I don't know that I'd be in this position. It really allowed me an opportunity to enjoy the sport and ultimately the team aspect of competing for something that's larger than yourself.
Yeah. No, that's very good. I think those things, as you just said, are super important, especially the support of having a whole state that has your back, that aren't really spread thin in regards to just commitments to different teams or different programs or different sports, right? Like you said, you guys don't have professional sports. And so to have so much of the community in the state to back you, I think it's humongous, right? And to have that support and kind of talking about those things, where we talked about like it being in Lincoln. Now, if we're talking about, the United States, where is Nebraska, where is that? And
yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to say that, like, that's always one of the first questions I ask recruits when I talk, like, what do you know about Nebraska? Like, I think there's always some misperceived conceptions about what we are, what we stand for, what our culture is like, what our city is like, because I think people just make general consensus on it. It's always interesting once they actually visit campus and they're like, oh, it's an actual city. I think they assume we live on farm ground. But one of the first things I always explain is, the state of Nebraska is technically right smack dab in the middle of the United States, and Lincoln, we're in that southeast corner of the state of Nebraska. So Iowa's pretty close, Kansas is pretty close, Missouri's pretty close, as far as access to some different states. But yeah, our population, we're about, at least our city, the city of Lincoln, we're about 275,000, which is a pretty large college town. I mean, I still consider us a college town. But it's pretty, it's not small, but we're not real large. We're not metropolitan either. So we're kind of right there in the middle. I didn't mean to like cut you off in your questions.
Oh, you're good. You're good. Please talk. In regards to like enrollment, like how many, students are there, and then how many athletes, if you may know, are, make up that enrollment as well?
Yeah. I mean, it always fluctuates, right? So I know our goal within our university spectrum as far as enrollment, like full enrollment at the University of Nebraska undergraduate, we're usually around 25 to 30,000. So again, we're not real small, but we're not real big. We're not talking, 60, 70,000 students. So when they come to classes, they're going to get an average range of some really large classes as far as lectures. And you're also going to have an opportunity to have some smaller, more specialized time in that sense. We were talking about, and then student population, student athletes here. Okay, I think we're right around 600 to 700 student athletes. We have 15 varsity sports. So some kind of crossover, like our volleyball team plays beach volleyball, or you have indoor and outdoor track and field type situation. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty, I would say right in the middle is kind of really how I explain it. We're again, not a really large, our campus is not really spread out. So you have the ability to really be able to walk from class to class. You're not having to drive across towns. We do have an East campus that gets a little bit more into our agricultural side of things. Our law school, our dentistry school are over there. But really between those two campuses, that's where a majority of their classes are going to happen. So most of the time they're going to, spend their time here on city campus. That's where all of our athletic departments or athletic facilities are really located. And really being able to, spend time around their other student athletes. I mean, we're not so large that you're never going to know anyone else. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that that's really what makes us kind of this special. We have this community that surrounds us, but then inside of that, we have our, our student athlete population, our athletic department. And a lot of our resources encourage the opportunities for our student athletes to kind of commingle and be able to get to know. I think it's an important part of their experience is being able to form relationships and friendships outside of just our sport, because to me, Nebraska and that N, we call it the iron N, that iron N mean family.
Yeah.
And ultimately I believe providing those resources or those spaces for our student athletes to kind of be able to widen their circle is really important to their experience and their growth as adults.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. And talking about even just, some of those things that we talk about, location and stuff like that, and you talked about the size of the university. Now, with that, does that make you guys a Division 3, Division 2, Division 1? And with that, what conference are you guys in? Because some people may know, some people may not know what conference, what division you might be in. And then, because I think that also impacts if they're looking for scholarships, if there's, parents or, prospect athletes that, that's kind of what they're looking for, kind of knowing what university may offer.
Yeah. So our University of Nebraska is kind of unique in the sense of we actually have University of Nebraska Omaha, University of Nebraska Kearney, and they obviously operate, maybe not obviously, but they operate kind of separately, but we're all kind of one system. We're University of Nebraska at Lincoln, so I'm going to speak to that space of it. The University of Nebraska Lincoln is Division 1. We're a fully funded gymnastics program, so we have 12 scholarships. And the conference, we've kind of, so when you want to talk about my relation of Nebraska, we've gone from the Big 8 to the Big 12, and now currently we're in the Big 10. And the schools in that conference include Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan State, Penn State, Maryland, Ohio State, Rutgers. And then next year, so in 2024-2025 season, we will add UCLA and Washington, along with USC. I mean, I should also state there's other schools in that conference. I'm speaking strictly for gymnastics. Like we have Northwestern, Purdue, Indiana, Wisconsin, they don't have gymnastics. So within our gymnastics and our sport, those are the schools. We are the largest conference. I don't know if a lot of people know that as far as number of schools that have women's gymnastics. And I also say we're the largest conference for men's gymnastics. So a lot of our schools have both men's and women's gymnastics.
No, that's great. That's very good. And I think that's super important to kind of clarify those things so then people kind of understand, the type of competition that they'd be up against, and to kind of know a little bit of the history, because the Big Ten is nothing to mess with in regards to just any sport or any conference. And it's one of the ones that people are moving into. It's not, where we see some of these conferences almost like that they're starting to dwindle a little bit and into moving out of, the Big Ten has really established itself as one of those strong conferences and ones that that you can get exposure, because I think one of the big things, in especially being in a fan-based sport, you want to get as many eyes as possible on you, and that makes it fun, right? Having an arena that's full, having people sitting down on a Friday, Saturday, Monday, afternoon, evening, watching, gymnastics. I think those things are super important, and having a conference that is well established and well known that kind of gives you those opportunities are super important. And transitioning, kind of talking about the university, you mentioned some of the programs that you guys had, like the dentistry program and stuff like that. And what are some other stuff, academically that Nebraska is known for? And what are some of their strong suits? If I'm looking into it, because I think the other important part is not just the athletics, right? You have to make sure that you're going to go and study something that you can go do the rest of your life. And you don't want to just go and say, I want to be a veterinarian, but Nebraska may
Right.
not have a veterinarian program. Maybe that's not the place for me solely because of that
Yeah.
reason, right? So what are some of
Yeah.
those things,
Yeah.
to kind of, initially talk about that, to give some direction to parents and to.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really great point. I mean, I do point out to our student athletes that you are a student athlete. You are here, and while we want to be successful in the athletics realm, it's really important to us, our continued growth on that side of things. But one of our biggest goals as an athletic department is to have our student athletes graduate. And ultimately for me, it's finding what that passion is. A lot of times, gymnasts come from high school, and we just don't have a lot of life experiences. So I'll touch on that maybe a little bit later, but I will say that one of the things at Nebraska that I don't think a lot of people know is we have the most academic All-Americans in the country.
Oh, wow.
I think we're 75-ish, kind of fluctuates a little bit, more than second place, which is usually Notre Dame and Stanford kind of go back and forth. So I do think that that's one key point about the University of Nebraska. I believe that we have that many academic All-Americans because of our resources that we provide for our students, but ultimately our student athletes, in our academic source. So I will say that I believe when students come on campus and I'm able to show them the resources that we have here, ultimately I feel that their job at this time academically obviously is to be successful, but they're going to be successful if they're enjoying what they're doing. Right. So my goal for them is to be able to come in and find whatever that next passion may be. So, they may have come in and I'm going to be a doctor. I want to go the medical route. And we have resources for that, but they may figure out, I'll speak to my personal experience. I was going to be a doctor until I took chemistry 1, which we call chemistry 109. And that did not go so well for Heather. So eventually I switched my major to business. So I do understand that route of, without the life experiences, it's hard to really know everything out there that's available. And I feel like my job is to really help them kind of identify or find that identity outside of our sport, because ultimately gymnastics comes to an end. I mean, unfortunately, we don't have professional gymnastics. They may choose to go into coaching. They may choose, to do something within our sport. But ultimately you got to figure out what that next passion is, because competing in our sport beyond college, although it's becoming a little more popular within the elite spectrum of things, it is not always, it's just not the majority of people that happen. So we have over 150 different majors here at Nebraska. So really, I just encourage them to kind of be able to figure out what that is for them. I've had students, their junior going into their senior year, switch majors. Obviously there's NCAA rules that you have to abide by. So sometimes there's limiting factors in that sense. But most recently we had a student athlete who was going to go the medical route, and she was in one major and she decided she wanted to go into engineering. And I believe her original major was biological sciences. And when she switched to engineering, she was able to get her degree within biological sciences engineering. And now she's got a full ride at a graduate program doing aeronautical space engineering. So, I think it just goes to show that the reality of, as we're kind of along this journey of life and ultimately these impressionable years for our student athletes, is that opportunity to kind of figure out what they really, really enjoy. I want them to be able to move on and be successful. The other piece that I'm going to speak to that I think is really important about our athletic department that I don't think any other school does, we offer a guaranteed what we call post eligibility opportunity. So if you graduate from the University of Nebraska, let's say you want to go on and become a doctor. If you graduate from the University of Nebraska and you exhaust your eligibility, we will provide you a guaranteed $7,500 post eligibility scholarship that can be used towards the tuition if you wanted to go on to medical school, or maybe you didn't have the opportunity to do a study abroad program and you wanted to do something like that. It can be now NIL is really a popular space. So you're seeing more and more entrepreneurs. So you can use that money to help you kind of an entrepreneur idea, or you can use it for an internship. So, I mean, just really the opportunities of setting our student athletes up for success is ultimately our goal. What they choose to major in isn't necessarily something that I'm like, oh, I think you should go this route, or I think you should go that route. I think I want them to, for me, it was about figuring out what I wanted to do. What was my definition of how I saw Heather? I hope that my student athletes will continue to find ways to, figure out what that passion is for them. And then, I think we do a great job as an athletics department here is really just providing those resources for our student athletes to excel at whatever that may be.
Yeah. No, I think that's super important because, as you mentioned, the academic side is crucial because that's really your make or break, right? Because you can go and do well athletically, but as you said, in our sport, we don't really have a clear path to a professional way of the sport. Elite, as you have mentioned, has kind of showcased a little bit of that, but even then it's not where it's something you can really go and really pursue and know that there could be a guarantee to it.
Yeah,
right?
there's a lot of factors, that aren't necessarily, how your body holds up, what kind of skill level you can maintain. There's just a lot of undeciding factors. So, the reality of the situation is what will you fall back on should that not exist?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that's just a really important piece of, most of our athletes will come in with some general idea of what they would like to do based on their personal experience, maybe something they've had experience with, whether that's physical therapy or an orthopedic doctor, maybe something mom and dad have done or another family member they've seen do, but they just really haven't had a lot of experience because we spend so much time in gym and school, right? That we don't necessarily have the time to do that. That for me, that freshman year is really kind of figuring out, is this really what I want to do? Or is there another passion out there that I just maybe was unaware of or haven't had the chance to experience? And I think that that's an important growth or learning process for those young kids. Or not kids, young women, I should say.
Yeah. And talking about even just like the university in regards to just socially, I think one of the big things when a athlete is coming to a university, especially leaving home, if you're used to just being at home, is being able to interact with other people, also to be able to go out and do things. Like, what are some of the big things that you can do in Lincoln or around the campus socially, that when someone is coming there, are there theaters I can go to? Are there concerts that come do some of those?
I mean, ultimately the things that most of our kids do are going to go support their other student athletes. So on a Saturday, well, actually we have our first football game coming up on Thursday night at Minnesota, so people are talking about where they're going to go watch that and be able to do that. So I would say that that's probably the priority number one of most of my student athletes is volleyball's in season right now, soccer's in season, or part of their season is happening right now. So they're utilizing a lot of that. We have a arena here in town. We split the cost. The university split the cost of building that arena with our city. It's called Pinnacle Bank Arena. So I know there's a country artist. Don't quote me on this. I think it's Kane Brown. I don't follow the concerts as well, but our girls are really, really into concerts. And so the city will use that arena to host concerts, maybe shows. Cirque du Soleil has come into town. We have a performing arts theater on campus. A lot of traveling Broadway shows will come through there. And really, I think the benefit is the opportunity to just spend some time together. I think that that's really ultimately what a lot of our student athletes will do, in finding those spaces to get out and find an environment. I know my team does a lot of, just team get-togethers. We might do some fun team activities. Omaha is about 45 minutes to an hour drive from here. So that's probably our largest metropolitan city in Nebraska. And so sometimes they'll go up there for other concerts. So it just kind of depends on the athletes' interests and students, things going on. I think that our university in general does a really great job of just planning activities around campus. We've had Garth Brooks came and played our stadium a few years back. We have this on Wednesday tomorrow. We have the volleyball day is what they're calling it. 92,000 fans are coming to watch an outdoor volleyball game in our football stadium. And then Scotty McCreery is playing a concert at the end of it, within our football stadium. So, I just think they do a great job of finding ways to connect our community. To me, that's just really what this is all about. It's not always about like finding ways they can, go do something, but how do we do something that connects all of us together?
Right.
Yeah, I think as far as like the University of Nebraska and what it means to myself would be, the dynamic of a family, really. I think I alluded to that a little bit before in some of my answers, how I feel that, our community, our athletic department, and ultimately our university really are like a family unit in some aspects. We're all trying to find ways to continue to, better Nebraska. As far as our athletic or our gymnastics program goes, I think the benefit for me is I grew up here. I've experienced it firsthand as far as a student athlete here. So I feel like I have kind of that connection to our alumni base, as far as like knowing kind of the history of what's happened. Obviously I've moved away a few times, so there's a few gaps in my connections. But I feel like I have that understanding of where Nebraska gymnastics has really come from, kind of where we're going, as far as the values and what I believe that Nebraska stands for, or at least myself is loyalty, hard work, commitment, and truly love. I think you really got to love what you're doing, to really be able to come from a place of empathy and the ability to allow these student athletes an opportunity of growth, as human beings, as young adults who are just trying to kind of figure some things out. You've got to be able to, to me, have that understanding. I know I was one of those student athletes, right? Like I just needed somebody to like give me space to make my own mistakes, and really be able to learn from that. I think commitment, I think in my opinion, my heart just bleeds Nebraska. I will do whatever I can, ultimately to try to figure out what's best for our program. I think putting the team above myself, sometimes is kind of my motto, and modeling some of those behaviors. You have to, sometimes do the things that are uncomfortable, for what's better for the team to be able to move forward. I think loyalty goes into trust. I always pride myself on trying to be as honest, and loyal to the people involved in the situation, as best as I possibly can. I try to bring that to our program, and really trying to create this one unit, this family kind of dynamic. And I hope people can genuinely sense that that's ultimately, where I'm coming from, as I approach, my head coaching role and kind of leading the program.
Yeah, no, and I think that that's really important. Those values that you talked about, and being authentic and having people see those things, and not just say, these are what I value as just nice words to kind of talk, but live it out. Like that's who I am. That's ingrained in my character.
Hmm.
And these are things that I walk out myself. I think it's really important because I think with anybody, especially with athletes being impressionable at this time, that's what they want to see. They want to see authenticity. And sometimes if they get somewhere and they don't see that, they just heard all the nice things
Yeah.
that people said, and they don't feel that when they come. That makes them
Yeah.
want to leave because they feel as if they were misguided and misled, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And what they
And
were.
yeah, I think ultimately most student athletes just want to feel accepted and loved. You know what I mean? And like I alluded to, my experience, I wasn't perfect. I don't preach that I'm perfect now. I try to model those behaviors for my student athletes. I try to allow them spaces to be able to um, come to me and ask questions, and be able to have conversations with, I don't understand this, or I want to know why on this, and be able to just have open and honest conversation, and be able to do it from a place of love and caring, and ultimately I believe the direction and the culture within, specifically this team, and how we're moving forward um is really through that family dynamic.
Yeah, no, and I think I love it because I think that that makes it very you know, very smooth just because again with family you're able to go through hard things, you're able to go through tough things, you're able to go through, the highest of highs, and being able to know that you guys all have, a vision that you guys are all aligned with, and that you guys
Right.
are able to, work through that together. And talking
Yeah.
about family, who are some of the other members that you have part of your staff that kind of help, walk out, this vision, um,
Yeah.
and to guide these young athletes?
Yeah. I mean, I think we have a lot of support staff around, and to name all of them would be really challenging. But I think that that's what's special about Nebraska is there's, you have your academic counselor, you have your doctor, you have your sports psychologist, you have your nutritionist. So I don't want to mislead and say that I feel like our myself or our coaching staff is the only people that are resources for our student athletes. But with that being said, within our gym, our other coaches that we have are Brian Amato. Brian Amato primarily coaches bars. I think he comes with a lot of the same experiences that I've gone. He probably has a little bit more in depth, like he's coached some national team members within the club side of things. So I think he has a lot of experience there. He's very like he can envision how to get from point A to point B pretty clearly. I think he does a great job with our student athletes of just being able to allow them the opportunity to kind of trust the process. I think a lot of times because of the way a lot of the youth are kind of exposed to social media, right? The instant gratification. So sometimes the patience of just kind of being able to trust, like you don't have to be perfect right away. You know what I mean? Let's try something. And so I think he does a great job of utilizing his knowledge, teaching like life, things that are important in life through the sport. And I think he's done an awesome job of being able to do that with our student athletes. Alexei Koltkov, he just finished up his first year with us. He oversees, well, last year he oversaw vault and floor. This year we brought on his wife, Marissa King, and those two will kind of pair together to oversee floor. Alexi will oversee vault. Marissa will kind of do our choreography. But I think Alexi, he's from Ukraine originally, did gymnastics, was, I believe, on their national team, and really has some international experience that way. Marissa's from the UK, so she has also international experience. Our roster, we have quite a few international student athletes on. I think that helps aid in that sense. They understand the European culture and living, and how that is different in the United States, and ultimately, provides another layer of a resource for our student athletes as they kind of transition. I think they're very genuine people. I mean, in general, I think they ultimately care about the person. I think that they want to be successful. I think we're all, I mean, as far as our staff, we're all pretty competitive. So, I think the conversations and the questions are, how do we continue to grow the program in a way that, doesn't diminish the impact of what we have the ability to do on our student athletes in that sense. So I think we're a pretty tight knit staff. We, spend time together outside of the gym, outside of the office, getting to know each other. I've really enjoyed that aspect. So I think, when you talk about what are the values, I believe, yes, as a leader and as the head coach, I have to have a set of values, but I think as a staff, it's our job to model those experiences, right? So the student athletes are able to see, Marissa and I have a female to female positive relationship. Alexi and Brian have a positive male relationship, and the inner workings of male to female, or coach to student athlete. I just think we have a awesome opportunity within this coaching realm to really be able to model that. And ultimately, when we as a staff we talk about what is it that we want our student athletes to experience, to learn, to be able to see, and to really understand how they as people can also continue to grow. So we spend a lot of time working on that, and talking about that dynamic as well. Don't get me wrong, we spend a lot of time talking about the X's and O's too, but when you're talking about a culture, I think it's those, not just always the X's and O's, it's the people that you have involved. And I'm really happy with where we are as a staff, and the work that we've kind of put in together to really model that family dynamic as well.
No, I think that's very good. I totally agree. Myself as a coach, I am a huge believer that, we have to model the things that we talk about, and we have to, be authentically ourselves again, because these athletes are, and just people in general, they're always they're evaluating us in every single day, and they're paying attention to the things that we're saying and what actions we take that,
right,
if they align, right? And that's going to ultimately cause them to really buy in. When we talk about buy in all the time, they want to see that what we're saying matches up, because as soon as it doesn't, we lose them a lot of the time, right? Or if we're consistent, sometimes if they don't buy in right away, if we're consistently showing them, hey, this is who we are and this is kind of where we're going, they're either going to do one of two things. They're going to be about it and hop on, or they're going to say, hey, sorry, this is not where I need to be, just because this is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something different. And that's okay too, right?
Yeah.
It just to be able to solidify what you are trying to do. You want everybody to be able to know, like, hey, this is kind of where we're going, this is your role and how we're going to get there, but we're going to support you through it, right? Because sometimes, again, some people really want that really want that person-to-person support. Some people just want, I just need help with my gymnastics, or that's what I'm ultimately here to do. And understanding those types of things, right? Some people want the combination, saying, hey, you know what, I'm here to get better at my gymnastics and do well, but also I want, people who can impact me in a positive way and challenge me to be better. Not necessarily make me better, but challenge me to be better because of the way they live, the things that they say that live up to those things, that really causes me to have accountability. But as well, it also convicts me, right? When there's times where I may not be my sharpest, right? There's someone who's consistent to be like, you know what, if I kind of stay the course, I'm going to ultimately get to where I want to get to, or at least get to a place where I feel satisfied with where I arrive. Right.
And I honestly, feel like even through my own experiences, I mean, I think about kind of moving through the coaching realm of things and how you, you idolize certain people, right? And you try to become them. It's taken me, until my age now, right, to really be able to figure out. I think it to be successful, I think you have to do it in an authentic way to yourself, right? And I think about all of these legends throughout our women's gymnastics, right? NCAA women's gymnastics. And while I can learn something from them, how do I authentically take that and be myself and learn something from it to be able to kind of move forward? And that took me some time to really understand not only that from a coaching side of things, but also, I think it's an important piece in the recruiting process, right? Because as you also noted, when you recruit a student athlete, I want them to see truly what Nebraska is about, what it's going to be like. We spend an extensive amount of time planning their ability to visit our campus and really being able to show them what it's going to be like to be a student athlete here at Nebraska. And if they've taken the time out of their schedule to be able to come here and visit, I want to make it as impactful as I possibly can in an authentic way, because like you said, it is about fit, right? What happens when a student athlete gets to campus, if they get here and they're like, this isn't really what I thought it was going to be. And it can go both ways, right? The whole process has to be an authentic journey of like, look, this is what you get when you come to Nebraska. This is what it's going to be like to be a student athlete here. These are the resources. And I think sometimes trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, if they really don't want to be here, it's just not a conducive environment. It's hard on them as student athletes. It's hard on us as coaches. And it just really puts a lot of stress in areas that, doesn't necessarily happen. I think a lot about like your dating experiences, right? Like just because it doesn't work at one place doesn't mean that that person's a terrible person or that they're, a bad child or whatever it is. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for people to just find what authentically works for them. And I think if I can, in that process, be able to authentically show what that looks like, I think they'll know exactly what that means when they get here at Nebraska.
Yeah, no, and I think that's excuse me. No, I think
You're right.
I think that's very good because so many times, especially I think now with this transfer portal being a big thing, you're starting to, I think it may really expose the journey that people go on, right? More than anything, because I also think there's a factor that where people are trying to get their next opportunity that like makes sense for them in regards to opportunity to compete or opportunity to be able to get the funding. I understand those types of things, but I also think a huge part of that is where people have gone somewhere just because they may have not done adequate research, in that process, or they've just been so excited to be in that process of doing it just because of whatever factors that they might have missed some things to them that could have been quote unquote like red flags, or they just are not really truly bought into what the process needed to be, and so they made decisions without really weighing the pros and the cons and types of things. So one of the ultimate things even with this that I want to do is at least give people a better starting point, right, to be able to get to hear from some of these coaches and hear about these universities, so at least they can already have some perspective. I also want to be able to go on these campuses and have like just do some of these like tours or even just be in the gym while there's practicing, and so they can kind of see like what the environment is like, so then they can at least have a sneak peek prior to starting their process or in the middle of their process, so then they can make hopefully better decisions that helps even with that transfer portal where people are going to places where they're excited to be there. Hey, I'm excited to be at Nebraska, because I know.
And if they're excited about it, they're going to match my values of that commitment, that loyalty to, what they actually bring to the table.
Right.
For sure. I think I said this earlier. I think Nebraska's continually overlooked. And in my opinion, I think there's some preconceived notions about exactly what we are, what our environment is like. And I feel like if people just have the opportunity to come and see this, I think that they're going to be pleasantly surprised at what we can provide and what we do provide for our student athletes, and the experience in that sense. But I can't promise mountains. I can't promise the beach. I can't promise, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sunshine and 90-degree weather all year. That's just not authentically who Nebraska is.
Right.
But we're also not, the North Pole where it's minus 20 year round, or I don't know. I'm probably now making assumptions about them, but you know what I mean? Like I think there's a genuine ability for somebody to be able to go, okay, I'm interested in this because of what the people bring to it. And then utilizing that opportunity to come and see it, because I think once you see it, you really understand kind of what the culture and what the environment is like. But people have to be willing to be able to do that and make that commitment to kind of check it out and see it. I think we have some really great things kind of on the horizon for us as an athletic department. I think there's a lot of momentum behind us currently in that space. And we're anxious right now to start getting our 25s on campus and showing those that are excited to be a part of Nebraska, what it's going to be like.
Yeah. And, in regards to like talking about recruits, some questions that I have, that some parents may ask, or even recruits may ask, what are some of the best ways to be able to contact, and who are the people to contact? Who's more in charge of recruiting, being of that recruitable age, right? Being the going into your junior year, that June 10th or June 15th, sorry, of your junior year, being able to, contact. So is it better for me to send you a DM, or is it better for me to email you? Is it better to email another coach, or, some of those things that kind of be able to get my name in front of you if this is where I feel like I want to be, or at least one of the universities I want to look into?
Yeah. So Brian Amato's our recruiting coordinator. And so I always think he's probably a great resource from the front side of things. What I'll say is, as coaches, at least how our staff works, we're not necessarily at our desk all day, which means we always have our cell phone with us. So a text message, a DM, something along those lines are easy access for us to get to. We're not always sitting at our desk responding to emails. Doesn't mean we don't get them. It just means we're not always right on top of it like we are with the cell phone. So in my opinion, I think the best ways, and this is usually what I try to ask, is some form of texting or sending us a message. Instagram's kind of like the hottest place right now from a recruiting standpoint. So I think that's the best space to send a DM if they don't have our cell phone numbers. I know my cell phone numbers on my profile on the website at huskers.com. So they're able to look up email addresses there as well. So I believe Brian's is also on there. So Brian's our recruiting coordinator. Marissa will help do some of the responses as well through a recruiting standpoint. But I mean, ultimately, we have recruiting meetings as a staff regularly. So, we're always constantly talking or sharing videos or texts or whatever. So if you get one of us, you're probably going to get all four of us having that information at some point.
Very nice. Now, when it comes to so someone who's of recruitable age, and at that point, when you are looking into them, like besides the obvious, which I think in this point is the gymnastics, right? A lot of like making sure that gymnastics, either fits the level that you're going to compete at. So, am I able to make Nebraska's lineup
Right.
or
Yeah.
challenge for a lineup? Not necessarily make it, but can I challenge for a lineup right now?
Yeah.
What are some of the other factors that you are looking for in someone that you want to become a Cornhusker, part of the Big Red family?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, you hit on the first piece, obviously athletics and being able to contribute. I think, in my opinion, that's part of their experience. Nobody wants to go somewhere and not really have the opportunity to be able to contribute. So that's usually step one. Beyond that, we talk about, somebody who has goals academically, because like we noted before, I feel like academics is an important part of their experience here. And we do take it quite seriously. We have 100% graduation success rate. We also, have a cumulative athletic department wide, so student athlete wide, a cumulative GPA of a 3.3. I think it's a 3.33. So it's pretty important that you have goals in that space, because, like I said, to fit our culture, I think that's something that's important. And then beyond that, it's about who they are as a person, right? Like you hit on it earlier. Like, if you're not excited about being a part of Nebraska, it's going to come off, you know what I mean? And I want those people that are excited to be here, but also, what kind of teammate are you? What are your characteristics and your values that you bring as a member of the team? Like, how will you contribute outside of your gymnastics realm? Because I think if you have those three pieces, I feel like the chair, the stool, whatever you want to call it, is a pretty stable place. So, and just, to be honest, like an open-minded, somebody who really has that growth mindset, right? Like, what's the ability to come in and kind of utilize my experience as a gymnast to kind of grow as a person, because I think that's another piece that really fits our culture well.
And that's really good, because I think, what you just mentioned, being able to have all those factors is not just being one dimensional, right? Being able to be multi-dimensional, to be able to have an impact, because I think there's a give and a take for both, right? There's obviously you going to be able to, hopefully, for some, be able to get your school paid for and being able to do the sport that you love, but also to be able to help, make a positive impact on the coaches that you're going to work with, the other athletes that you're going to work with, your peers, in your academic classes, or even on social realms, if that's through other sports, activities and stuff like that. And being able to not just be, someone who can produce a good product in a score, but being able to have a great character, like, having those people who, make an impact on the apparatus, as well as having an impact, in people's lives, that, and I think ultimately what makes sports so important, and so, like, such a strong thing, is because the lifelong relationships that you get because of those. You can talk about, those teammates that you probably have, that you probably still talk to now, or if you guys were to get together, from any of the times you were there, that you guys could almost, if you haven't seen each other since you guys competed, you guys can get to a place where you're like, hey, right where you left off, and talk about the days of competing, talk about, not just the competitions, but do you remember this practice? Do you remember when head coach did this? Do you remember when this assistant coach did this? Do you remember when so-and-so did this? Or, hey, do you remember, when we went to the sporting event together and how fun that was? Or, hey, do you remember when, we were going through this hard time and we were there for each other? Like, those things that really make life really matter, right? Because ultimately, in whatever we're doing, this is just a tool that we're using to really allow life to mold us, right? It's
Mm-hmm,
not
mm-hmm.
necessarily, this is a definitive thing where it's like, you know, um, everything's just about the sport. It's
Right,
what can the sport teach me in who I can become as
right,
an adult, or, when I'm in that moment, that really is what,
right.
these
Yeah,
sports.
what can you learn and what's the legacy you can leave? Right.
Yep.
And I think as far as where Nebraska is and kind of where we're going, my opinion is having the people that are committed to the growth process of this. Nebraska is not on the women's side won a national title, and the people that really are involved in wanting and committing to the process of being able to commit to that growth and utilize our sport to be able to do that, but also be able to kind of leave their legacy and lay that foundation so ultimately we can attain those things.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Oh, no,
i'll
you're
let
good.
i'll let you do your thing. I'm going to text Alexi real quick.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. No,
Okay.
no, it's good. Um, I think that's, as you said, those things are super important, and that's also, part of why I want to do this, is to know that there's people like you, who are out there that really care about, in the individuals and the athletes, and to think about, like you said, the legacy that they're going to leave,
Yeah,
not just from the sport that they're doing, but who they are, right?
yeah,
That's going to speak
yeah.
volumes to
Right, right.
them.
And just the for us, the commitment to that growth. You know what I mean? Like that commitment to, I want to leave this program in a better place than when I came in. I want to attain something that's never been done. I want to, utilize my sport and my relationships in a solid way. I fully believe that in order for a team to be successful, you have to have that relationship. So
Yeah.
when you're talking about that ability to, I still to this day will call up or see my teammates and just be able to, pick up kind of where we left off. And I do think it's those relationships that make the biggest difference in that, but also the ability and who they are as people to really kind of embrace that, like I said, the growth mindset of kind of where we're going and be able to fully buy into that vision.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what are some of the things that you would tell, parents, or even just, club coaches, to kind of help their athletes? What are some, tips and that you have for them? Because I think, especially you being on almost every side of the sport, where
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
were an athlete, growing up, as well as being a collegiate athlete, and then being on the side of recruiting, you see a lot. I mean, and sometimes when we're not in certain shoes, we don't really understand or see certain things. So what are some things that you can kind of, share
Yeah.
to help them, or help their athletes out in the process? Because I know
Yeah.
recruiting especially can be a stressful process, and
Yeah.
even just the pressure that could be put on athletes
Yeah.
to especially if they're in a place where that they can, you know, go compete at the next level at whatever division that is. Sometimes there's pressure that can be put on, those athletes, that
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
be good pressure, but also pressure that is not so healthy for them, that ends up
Yeah.
causing them, by the time they get there, that they're tired, right? That
Yeah.
they're super fatigued and they don't have as much to give, and then burnout happens.
Yeah. I think that as parents and club coaches, the best thing that they can really be able to do is just to be a resource for their student athletes. I mean, ultimately, the athlete has to make the decision. I think that's, the one thing to kind of keep at the forefront of um at the decision making process at the beginning of this journey, is the athlete really has to kind of drive what they want. Sometimes I think those pressures come from like parents. Sometimes I think the pressures come from club coaches, like, oh no, you need to go to this school or you need to go to that school. Or I also think there's sometimes like I alluded to before, there's sometimes the athletes have in mind, like, I'm going to go to this, but maybe their gymnastics doesn't quite fit that one. Maybe you as a club coach know more about them, like is the ability to be a part of this team, or is the ability to be able to contribute, Do you want to contribute one event? Do you want to contribute two? Do you want to contribute all around? Where do you realistically, as a club coach, see that this student athlete can really be able to fit? I think sometimes there's a piece of, a lot of social media. We use social media also in a recruiting platform, right, to put out pieces, and just, there can be hype around certain things or certain people or certain schools that, maybe are not the best fit for that student athlete, or maybe given the opportunity, some of these other schools, whether Division 1, 2, or 3, would maybe be a better fit for that student athlete. And so I think just as parents and club coaches, really being that resource to kind of help guide them, maybe answer some questions, maybe point out some things that they haven't really thought through. I think ultimately just kind of letting them have the conversations, because a lot of times as a recruiter, the kid will ask us some questions, but they're not gonna, feel immediately comfortable to ask all of the questions, right? And so I think as parents and club coaches, you can sit and listen. You can, kind of help them maybe construct some other questions that they should ask. Maybe there's things you guys as adults see that these younger kids who are just going into their junior year don't necessarily see, whether it's white, the green flag or a red flag, or just really kind of being able to help them understand and gather information, because ultimately, they need to have all of the information to make the best educated decision that they possibly can. Yeah. I ultimately believe if those relationships work well, my personal approach to things is, if the parents have questions, I'm happy to answer those questions. But I believe that relationship is not strictly, but solely between me and the student athlete. I want to get to know them. I want them to get to know me. I want them to have all of the information about Nebraska before they're making that decision. I would love to have the opportunity with every single recruit in the country to show them those kinds of things. But I just think we're here to kind of help guide and shape them, not make the decisions for them, not clear the pathway for them, not, tell them where to go or what to do, but ultimately listen, and just be able to kind of help construct maybe some more questions for them to be able to gather information.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. And what are some things that, get the kids excited? What are things that you guys do that they get really excited about? Is there certain competitions, or there things that you guys do within the gym that really makes the athletes super excited, or even within the university that makes them really excited?
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that gets them most excited is just competition season. Leotards, right? Like those are all like the general, the free apparel, all of those things. But I think the things that we try to do is really spend time together. So I think they enjoy being able to do some of those things. We just did our team retreat this weekend. I think they always look forward to that at the beginning of the year. I think they look forward to different opportunities that we do. It's kind of based each year is like unique. So it's not like one set, like, oh, we do this, then we do. I mean, obviously season comes at the same time. The team retreat and the start of school tends to happen at the same time, but then kind of based on where those go. I think we just like to try to kind of assess, where's the team? Where do they need some attention? Where do they need some love? Where do they need some, guidance in what they're trying to do? So I think when we have opportunities to really be able to do some things. So, things that we typically do, we do a lot of volunteer outreach opportunities. Some of those are the same every year. So I think they look forward to connecting with our community. We do, Thanksgiving or Christmas meals or Christmas party, or we've in the past couple of years have really done kind of a donation type drive amongst our team and our families with giving back to a family. So I think that those really have meaning to them when you're talking about things outside of our gymnastics. When it comes down to gymnastics, I think they're competitive people. They, they look forward to that performing under the lights, the opportunity to be in front of our fans, to show them what they've been working hard to do. And just being able to, right now, I think our motivation is really capitalizing on things and achieving things that maybe other teams. So we're, the 49th team here at Nebraska currently, right? What's going to make 49 different than 1 through 48, right? And I think they're really processing and excited about that opportunity to, as a group, as a collective group, Team 49, working together to kind of lay that ability and achieve some things that maybe other teams have not been able or have just not achieved. What's going to make them unique?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. One question that I do have that I haven't really asked yet to anybody, but I think is important, is the role of a walk-on. Not necessarily just a role, but also kind of what does that entail? And
Right.
also what kind of,
Support.
you talked about that to be able to help, because I think one thing that has been a huge thing trending, it seems like, especially in the last few years, is where walk-ons are getting scholarships and stuff like that. But sometimes that's not everybody's. Not everybody's going to be a scholarship. You only have 12, and as you had mentioned, kind of off of recording, the number of athletes you have on your team this season. Not everybody's going to have that scholarship.
Sure.
So, what are some things for parents to understand, for coaches to understand,
in that sense?
To know, like, what do they get in regards to part of a team, and what other resources do they get, and what do you guys do, at least at Nebraska, to be able to help get them, especially if they're academically in a place where they're thriving, to be able to help them and make sense, at least financially, to come to you?
Right. No, I think that's a great question. And like you said, I'm going to speak to Nebraska because I don't believe every program handles this the same way. I think, initially in the recruiting process, when you're recruiting a student athlete, you're obviously looking at where they're going to be able to contribute, and what that looks like. So when you're starting to look at priority walk-ons and walk-ons, you're looking at maybe student athletes who don't necessarily have all 4 events, right? Like where they may contribute may not look like an all-around student athlete. That doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have the opportunity to do that. The way we tend to kind of approach to me, you as an outsider should be able to walk into my program and not necessarily know how somebody's treated as a walk-on or a scholarship athlete. So we here at Nebraska provide a significant amount of resources and time to our student athletes. They have equal opportunity to make our lineups. Ultimately, 6 people are going to make a lineup every week. We try to, as a staff, pick those best 6 people on a week-to-week basis. You don't necessarily always know what's going to happen. Unfortunately, in our sport, there's injuries or there's other things that happen, or other situations that can arise that could cause, some ability for different people to make those lineups. We've had situations where, somebody got injured and, the next person in came in was a walk-on. You know what I mean? That was their strongest event. They were able to come in, they contributed to the team, they contributed to the team score, and ultimately that person did so well that they never even got taken back out of the lineup. So I think that there's, the opportunity to be able to do those things. Sometimes that means that the ball is in that student athlete's court, meaning what are they going to commit? How hard are they going to work to that process? We talk a lot about growth, right? We here at Nebraska, genuinely, unless there's an injury that occurs, practice all 4 events, because you just, as a freshman, you just never know where that's going to go. Maybe you'll reach limits or learn something you never thought you would learn, and something will click. So for us, I think it's a growth process mindset.
Yeah.
As far as the resources that we really give our student athletes, all student athletes here at Nebraska, they get a computer when they come on campus. They get the same apparel packages. They get the same opportunities. We all train together. They get, the use of all of the same facilities, unlimited tutoring, all access to our academic resources, our athletic medicine resources. So we have, physicians, we have physical therapists, we have trainers, we have sports psychology. Again, these are all things that these student athletes are going to have the ability to do. We have a training table, which is our cafeteria for our student athletes. Again, something I think we do here at Nebraska. We provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner to all of our student athletes for free, whether walk-on or scholarship student athletes. We provide student athlete assistance fund. We provide the post eligibility opportunity that I was talking about, that guaranteed $7,500 postgraduate experience scholarship that they're able to use as an experience. We provide, currently we're providing what we call invest funds, which is if they meet certain academic standards, all of our student athletes have the ability to receive that academic award, which is cash. We provide our life skills resources for our student athletes to be prepared for that next phase of life, whether that's through volunteering, whether that's through writing resumes, writing reference letters, writing, applications for different postgraduate education opportunities. So my hope is, as you come in as an outsider, you're not going to be able to tell who my walk-on and my scholarship athletes are. You might be able to tell a little bit based on, the number of events they're contributing athletically. But ultimately, I believe we are all equal human beings, and we should treat each other with those same opportunities. Now, like you said, sometimes there's opportunities to earn scholarships in our past, whether somebody's gotten injured and had to medically retire, or, something else opens up. We have awarded last year, as a matter of fact, we had a student athlete come in for us. She was a transfer student athlete. She competed only 1 or 2 events at her prior school. She came here, competed all 4 events for us at all of the meets throughout the year. I had a scholarship available. She not only contributed athletically, she drastically improved her academics, and really contributed as a member of our team, and we awarded her a scholarship. I would love to, because I expect the same things from all of my student athletes, the same commitment, the same hard work, that same loyalty, that same love. I would love to give them all scholarships. It doesn't necessarily always work that way. And so sometimes when you have that ability to do that, it's really fun to be able to recognize and reward somebody who maybe at one time was only doing a little bit, but has kind of grown. We talked about the growth mindset, has grown and been able to contribute more than what maybe they even thought possible. And that's what's really special. Nebraska, our university, we do have academic awards. So if they're a walk-on, we always encourage our student athletes to apply for those possibilities. We have some student athletes that have been able to earn full ride tuition academically because they've done so well within their academics in high school. We have Husker Legends, so that's money available for people who have ties to the University of Nebraska. Maybe somebody in their immediate families graduated. I can't speak to all of them because obviously as an athletic coach, we're not allowed to be involved in the academic scholarship process, but most of our student athletes and most of our walk-ons come in with some form of academic aid of some sort in that sense. And we do what we can to try to provide for them all of their athletic needs that they're going to need, that I'm going to require them to have: grips and chalk and pre-wrap and tape. All of that's obviously provided for all of our student athletes as well. So, I think we do a great job of really just providing that opportunity for all of our student athletes. Sometimes I feel like our tuition, at least I can speak for in our conferences, is definitely one of the cheapest, for lack of better terms, in that sense. So I think we provide not only the ability for a lot of people that are walk-ons to afford it, and not leave school with a significant amount of debt, but also all of the resources and the support that we provide to all of our student athletes, I think just ups the game within their experience, and ultimately being able to provide for them. So, I think it's been a pretty great experience for most of my student athletes. I feel like they feel that they're treated equally as well.
Yeah. And when you talk about the tuition, now, is there a difference, like if, out of state, in state, and because I know some places give athletes their in-state tuition, especially, on walk-ons and stuff like that. Or, you know, I'll have to talk to other divisions to verify this
Right.
information, but where like Division 2 or Division 3, where Division 3 doesn't have academic scholarships, or Division 2 programs aren't fully funded, and so they have something where that, to make it make sense for people to be able to give them their in-state tuition. Does Nebraska do anything like that for their walk-ons? Do they
Yeah.
provide in-state tuition to out-of-state
Yeah.
athletes who are
Yeah.
not on scholarship?
Yeah. So we don't technically have like priority in-state tuition like that here at Nebraska. But like I said, most of our out of state, most of our athletes in general, whether they're in state or out of state, qualify for some form of academic aid. So our largest academic aid that they can qualify for technically is about as much as that difference between out of state to in the state tuition. There's also a calculator on our website, at unl.edu. I believe there's a tuition calculator that they can type in. Sometimes there's not reciprocity, I can't think of the word, but where there's partnerships between different states, that maybe they qualify for some different academic aid. So we always recommend anyone that's looking to walk on to go on and complete this calculator based on their GPA, maybe their test scores, and what state they're from. And it'll be able to kind of estimate the cost of their tuition in general. So I have practice in like 5 minutes. I'm
No, sounds
sorry.
good. Oh, it's all
Okay.
right. I appreciate the time. I think this was super informative.
Yeah.
I appreciate how in depth you kind of went with everybody, or with everything. I think it's going to be essential for everyone to kind of at least have a grasp, at least somewhat of an understanding for just a general concept, but especially for Nebraska. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And I appreciate it in return. I think, like I said, I think sometimes Nebraska gets overshadowed by certain people. Hopefully this helps. And I appreciate your effort in trying to get our word out as well.
Yes. I look forward to seeing you guys rock, this season. And good luck with
Yeah. Thank
with
you.
practice today, but also
Yeah.
upcoming season. And hopefully I can get into campus and be able
You
to.
are welcome anytime. Come down. I want to show you the hospitality of Lincoln, Nebraska. So I'm super pumped for this team. We're excited to get out there and show the country what we're made of, and get to work. So yeah, thank you. Appreciate your time again.
Absolutely. Well, thank you
Yeah.
guys for tuning in. And thank you again, Heather, for tuning in to another episode of Heated Conversations.